lounging, son.
Welcome back to the Comic Lounge. My name's Ryan, and with me today, I have two awesome guests with me. I have Dave Baker, Nicole Goux, and we're here to talk about their new book. Comes out this month from Dark Horse. Everyone Is Tulip. Welcome, guys.
Thank you.
Yeah. So first off, I always like to ask people, especially when it's the first time I'm chatting with them, tell us a little bit about yourself, and like how your comic book fandom started, and then how that turned into wanting to do this for a career.
So I am a cartoonist and illustrator who was raised in Southern California. Went to school down here. Always planned on being an artist from as early as I can remember, really. I started reading when I was really young, like newspaper strips was probably my first introduction to comics. I would come home every day after school and pull out the funny papers and read them. And I don't think it even really connected with me that was comics in the way that we think of them now, because, of course, my brother read superhero comics and all that stuff, and I read Garfield and Zits and whatever was in the newspaper, non sequitur. Then when I was in probably early middle school, I got really into manga and reading Japanese comics, and spent a lot of time in middle school and early high school watching anime, reading manga, imagining I was going to move to Japan and be a mangaka, and yet somehow never actually sitting down and making a comic like that entire time. And then I sort of, I don't want to say I grew out of it, but I kind of shifted and thought I was going to be in animation, and then I thought I was going to be a painter, and then I thought I was going to be a editorial illustrator, and kind of lost the thread on comics and didn't really see it as a potential career or something that I was interested in doing so much anymore until after college. I met Dave, and he asked me if I wanted to do a comic, to which I immediately said, no, thank you. Because I was busy and had no real interest in that. And my idea of what American comics could be was actually fairly limited. And then we went to some zine fest, we went to some art shows, we went to a couple other things, and I started making comics with him, and I realized just kind of the breadth of what comics can be, and that there really is no limits to it. And ever since then, I've been making comics, and that seems to be the path for the foreseeable future now.
I've been into comics since I was a kid too. The first comic that changed my life was Hergé's Tintin. I was really into boy adventurer, girl adventurer stuff like Nancy Drew and the Hardy Boys, and my mom got some Tintins from the library, and it just was like, what is this? And it's kind of just been, straight on till morning since then. I've been making comics basically since I was a kid. I would make them in school. I'd make little self-published things, and then in high school I tried to do that a little bit more seriously and take them to conventions and sell them. My first real stab at making a comic was I made an X-Men fan comic. It's great. Marvel should publish it. It's definitely not the ramblings of a psychopath, because I was really obsessed with Nightcrawler, but I didn't understand why Nightcrawler was nice, and I wanted him to be like a maniac and teleport people's heads off. So the whole comic is just Nightcrawler just murdering dudes.
That's awesome.
Yeah. But yeah, I've been making comics ever since, basically. I'm assuming I'm preaching to the choir, but I think that comics are the greatest artistic medium in the history of mankind. And I think they are the most powerful creative agent in the history of the globe. And I don't say that in a sarcastic way, even though I sound sarcastic, because everything I do sounds sarcastic.
Yeah, I think comic books, they're my favorite medium, or I wouldn't have this channel and spend what free time I have in between my two jobs talking comic books. But yeah, it's amazing. And I think that comic books, now especially, there's something for everybody. It doesn't matter what genre you like. It doesn't matter what type of writing, what type of art. There is something for everyone. And I'm continuously discovering new people. Nicole, I discovered you from the Shadow of the Batgirl book, which is phenomenal, by the way. I love that book. Cassandra was one of my favorite Batman-related characters at DC. Dave, I saw you did an interview with Eli in the Wizard zine. So that's how I discovered your name. But then, and to prepare for this, I picked up Fuck Off Squad, which was awesome. I really
Thank you.
yeah, it was a really dope book, and I think that the chemistry you guys have and with your work is just it's awesome. Like it's seamless, and I love slice of life stuff. That's like become one of probably my favorite genre in comic books. Nicole, you kind of mentioned it that how you guys started doing comic books together. How did the working relationship really start, and was it kind of not love at first sight, but like kind of like that kind of type of thing, like where you guys got together and it was like, wow, this is easy, kind of, because it feels very easy the way you guys the art and the writing is just it's perfect together.
Yeah, I mean, I think there was some bumps in the beginning, mostly because I went to school for illustration. I've been drawing my whole life. Being able to draw and being able to draw comics are two completely separate skills. So in order to, tell a story with sequential illustration, there's kind of some things that you need to know and rules that you need to follow or know so that you can break them. And the first comic that I did with Dave was an 8-page comic for his book Action Hospital, which is a kind of sprawling epic with all these different characters and kind of rotating artists. And I did an 8-page story with that. And the first one was, a little rough because I had never drawn anything longer than a 1-page comic before. And so there was a little bit of a learning curve for me. But I think because my introduction to working on comics coincided with working on comics with Dave, our relationship is really intertwined. My understanding of making comics comes from working with Dave. And I've made stuff on my own, I've made stuff with other people, but because the origin of me making stuff is with him, it kind of is like our working relationship is built into the way that I make comics. So I think that's a really important part of why it works so well with us. That, and we also just spend a lot of time together talking about Star Trek and joking around. And
There's also the fact too that like I think there's two types of writers in comics. There are people who write what they want to see and then find someone that can do that thing, or people who write what the artist wants to draw. It's almost kind of like maybe it's like the equivalent of like a low budget movie or something where you like look at what you have. You're like, I got a car, I got a bus, I got this tree. Can I make a movie? Can I tell a story with a car and a bus and a tree? And like that's kind of the way Nicole and I work, where I think I'm very interested in, we're both very interested in like the formal side of comics and the mechanics of comics language, but I'm also not going to write action adventure stuff for her or, sprawling science fiction for her or something along those lines. Like that's not what she wants to draw. And in order to get the best work possible, I'm going to meet her, not halfway, but like meet her 90% of the way, meet her in the sweet spot, right? In the pocket of what she wants to do. And also, coincidentally, what she wants to do is what I want to do like 90% of the time too. Like I've said this before, but the stuff that I draw tends to be more kind of high concept genre-y stuff because I can't draw that well. So I got to rely on like, oh, look, it's a ninja. That's cool. Or, oh, look, it's like a weird zombie guy. That's cool. Where if I had my druthers, I would draw like Nicole draws. I would draw slice of life, drama, interpersonal stories, because that's what is very interesting to me. So, her skill set matches up perfectly with the area of my interests that I am not particularly skilled at. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think that like Fuck Off Squad, like especially like the dialogue, it just feels so, it feels natural. It doesn't, I don't know how else to describe it besides that, but it just reads really well. It's really snappy. And the art just is, I loved the art in that book. And I really loved Everyone Is Tulip. It was a little bit more of, it was very similar in tone. At least to me,
Yeah.
I really dug the book. And, I want to know if you guys could talk a little bit about Everyone Is Tulip. The fact that I think I was telling you, Dave, before Nicole, you joined us, I thought it was a mini series. So like I was waiting to read it until I was going to talk to you guys. I ended up knocking out the whole trade this morning. I just couldn't stop reading. So I just want to hear a little bit about the project, a little bit about the idea behind it, and the decision to do a straight to graphic novel.
Yeah, so it's Everyone Is Tulip is a story about a young woman from Arizona who moves to Los Angeles to try and become an actor. And when she gets here, kind of haphazardly gets sucked up into the high stakes world of YouTube performance art, which is a real thing. And she finds herself at the center of this kind of bizarre internet vortex where she becomes a viral meme almost overnight. And so this person who set out to accomplish being, this kind of traditional actor, movie star type female ingenue, like that was her goal, is now on the bleeding edge of what our culture is currently reckoning with social media and viral fame and trying to parse out those things for herself. And it presents her with these questions that are that there almost are no right answers to. The book is kind of about compromise and about artistic integrity and about how far you would go to get what you want. And our central characters, Becca and Paradox, that like directors of these videos, they both are kind of different views on those issues. So the book itself is this kind of interpersonal drama set in LA about the world of influencers, but it's also not really about that. Like it's about larger themes, and that is just kind of the background that it's set in.
I kind of took something from I don't want to spoil it. I'll ask you after because I'm kind of curious if I was wrong about something. But yeah, I think it is interesting, the whole social media thing. Like, I don't even like doing it, but it's almost like a necessary evil when you're doing something and you need to promote. So I think that's really what I loved about the story. Like it doesn't even seem like she's really enjoying what she does, but at the same time, she's getting some sort of recognition and she can't help but continue to want to do that. And I think that's really interesting in this day and age, and it feels very now. And it feels very relatable. And I think that even if you're not somebody that uses social media for promotion or whatever, you could still totally relate to Tulip and that want to be recognized and that want to, be noticed.
Yeah, I think that all kind of dovetails into the central themes of the book, right? Like it's this kind of like bizarre compulsion where you're like constantly striving for people to look at you, but also there's this really strange, like, I kind of don't even want to do this aspect to it. And all of the characters in the book, there's, a kind of ensemble of characters outside of Becca and Paradox, and they're all forced to make decisions and interact with these ecosystems in different ways, depending on their socioeconomic status. And it's a book that I hope doesn't have a clear cut moral or ending. I feel like I'm hopeful that it will establish a theme and then walk the audience and the characters through those themes and then end in a kind of an interrogation of those ideas, not necessarily a definitive statement.
Yeah, I think the book started out with, we discovered some of these weird data-esque YouTubers, and we're really fascinated by them and by this idea of the character of these people versus what their real lives would be like. And as we continued to make it, it went from being about their lives to about kind of all our lives, because I know I personally relate really heavily as someone who has to promote myself online. So a lot of the stuff that they go through in the book of, you want to be putting stuff out there, but also it's sucking your brain out. But also if you don't post and you don't get the likes, and that might affect your career and blah, blah, blah. And there's all this back and forth, which, it started being about these other people, and then progressively more and more became about us and about the kind of dilemmas you go through as a creative, the decisions that you have to make, the compromises that you have to make, and ultimately being on the internet 24/7, which I am.
Yeah, it's something I spend way more time than I would like to, definitely. And that's one of the main reasons why I like won't read digitally for the most part, unless it's like for an interview, because like I stare at a computer long enough, I stare at a phone long enough during the day. I want the book in my hands, you know.
Mm-hmm.
I just like I really, really love like this stuff that you guys are doing, and it only makes me want to seek out more of your stuff. And like when coming up with the ideas for your stories, do you guys like sit down together and kind of work out the plot, and then Dave, you go script, and then Nicole, you do the art? Like, how does that work when doing the project together? Any of them?
Yeah, I mean, so this is a little related to that first question of why we work so well together, is that initially it was a little more like we came up with a rough general idea. Dave went and wrote it, and then I would go and draw it, and it was fairly divided. And it still is to a certain extent, but there's so much more back and forth and planning in the early stages of the book, where, you know, sometimes more so it was Dave's ideas initially, and then now it's like, oh, this comes from my idea and that comes from your idea, and we go back and forth. I think with Tulip, we went on a trip and talked about it for at least a couple of weeks, if not a month, back and forth before Dave ever sat down to write anything. So we do a lot of planning stuff beforehand, and then he'll write a script, and then I'll read it and give notes, and there's a lot of back and forth. And there's with the art too, where, you know, I'll send him thumbnails and he'll be like, that's not working, and I'll be like, go fuck yourself, and then I'll go fix it. And because I'm stubborn. But yeah, so it's very interrelated. And yes, Dave plots the story, writes the script, sits down, does that all that stuff. I do all the thumbnails, do all the art, do everything except for the color. And they are divided jobs, but they're so interrelated at this point that I think that's why sometimes it feels pretty cohesive in the way that we work.
Yeah, I mean, the short answer to the question that you asked is Nicole and I go to a park near her house, and we talk about story, and we play catch. I'm not even joking. Like we play catch. We just throw a baseball back and forth, and we talk about theme, we talk about character, we talk about narrative mechanics, and we're just out there for like a couple hours, you know, throwing the ball back and forth and figuring out the book. And we do that. Sometimes we do that like once, and then the whole thing is done, and I go away and do my thing. Sometimes we do that for weeks or months. It's just kind of dependent on what the given project needs. The pitch that we have out right now through our agent was kind of one of those things where I think Nicole actually had the idea, and I was like, oh, that's a really good idea. And then I think we played catch like twice, and like everything was there more or less. And then I went and just started typing. That
one we actually came up with, I don't remember where we were, but we were driving back from some road trip, maybe Sedona. We were in the car, and I was like, what if this dumb idea? And you were like, yes, let's do that. And then we spent a couple of weeks talking about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm excited about that one.
So I kind of want to ask about that, but I'll ask in a second. So were you serious when you said that this book has been like 5 years in the making?
Yes, but that is a complicated question. We did start it in 2017, but I have not been working on it the entire time.
Right, yeah.
In the middle of that, you know, I had been working on it, and I had a part-time job at the time. So it was kind of like doing the best I could. And then I got Batgirl. So I had to draw an entire other book for like a year and a half while I was still working on this one. And then the other part of that is that every time you make a comic, you should allot like a year of just trying to sell it, dealing with printers, dealing with editing passes, dealing with all this stuff. Because if you are self-publishing, you can sit down, make the thing, deal with the printer yourself, and go put it out there. And even that, you're going to end up with like, oh, I edited this wrong, or I put this PDF together wrong, or these bubbles are weird, I have to proofread this 17 times. But when you work with a publisher, everything gets drawn out and longer because you're waiting on them to put the contract together, you're waiting on them to do editing passes, you take too long to do something because you had to get another job to pay your bills, or there's just so many factors. So saying I literally worked on it for 5 years is not 100% correct, but also it is true. But comics take a long time.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
I think that's so in those 5 years, like I realized like you weren't like literally like trying the book for 5 years because you have other projects that you guys are doing. But how much did the story change from that initial like thought, right? Like when you guys sat down and were like, oh, let's do this. It sounds like a good idea, to the actual finished product that we're going to be getting.
Yeah, it changed a lot because originally we had talked about it as, I don't know if you've ever seen the movie Perfect Blue or Millennium Actress by Satoshi Kon, but they're really good, highly recommended. Millennium Actress is a movie about an old, like golden age of Japanese film era actress thinking back. She's being interviewed and it's her thinking back about her life, and the character at a certain point gets up in the interview and walks out the door, and as she walks through the door she leaves her house and ends up in like basically like World War II era Japan, and then she'll go through another doorway and she'll end up in like the 1970s in an audition for being in a movie or whatever. And Perfect Blue is kind of a similar theme where it's about an idol who is stalked by this obsessive fan who is in love with her character from one of her performances. And so we had kind of thought, oh, maybe it's more like the character of Tulip and the character of Becca are two separate characters, kind of like Perfect Blue, and maybe the feeling of the book would be more like Millennium Actress, where it would have all of this kind of like Lynchian dream logic, Satoshi Kon fluidity to the narrative. And then ultimately we both just kind of jointly agreed, like, I just don't know if that's the direction. Let's take it more kind of, grounded in air quotes. Let's have it be more literal about trying to reconcile with an online persona that is not in a high concept way, like coming at you. Because at one point we thought like, oh, maybe the online persona like comes to life and it's like a Tyler Durden style character. And then that ended up getting thrown out of the way too. So it kind of, there were a couple different permutations, but ultimately once I started really writing, that's when it kind of came together of like, oh, okay, this is what it is. It's people in rooms being sad.
Like all of our other books.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's, it's, you said earlier that we make slice of life stuff, which is true, but I think really we make people in rooms being sad books. Like that's like every one of our things is just like, how many people are in this room and how sad are they?
I mean, a lot of people spend time in rooms sad. So
yeah,
I mean that's life, Speaking of stuck in a house for a year, you know what I mean? With this fucking pandemic, LA, we got hit hard. Probably one of the most difficult years for so many people in many different ways. Was this when you guys really like got the majority of this work done, or have you been waiting until not calmed down, but things kind of opened up more? Because I know, like, I work at a shop, so.
Which store do you work at?
Collector's Paradise.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So I know that, like, for us, like, even when we reopened, it was still kind of slower. Like, comic books weren't even coming out. Like, they're open with no new books. So, I just was kind of curious, like, how that all played out in terms of the creation of the book and the timing of when you decided to release it.
If I remember correctly, I think the book did get pushed. I think it was supposed to be early spring. So it's actually been done for a while, or mostly done. Like I said, there's always stuff to do on a book. There's editing passes, there's design stuff, there's dealing with printing stuff. There's always something to do. And if there's the amount of time for it, the people working on the book will use the entire amount of time to do that. And if you have less time, you'll use that time. But the book itself has been completely drawn since, I want to say, like November, maybe even earlier than that. And it's been just the like nitpicky stuff and back matter and all that stuff for the last few months. And I don't think for us personally there was like a hold up with the pandemic. It was really just that we're on Dark Horse's timeline, and also it probably benefited us to wait a little bit longer so that by the time the book came out, people would be able to go to shops and get it. But nothing directly like, oh, we want to wait because of this, or we're struggling with finishing the book because of the pandemic. Because I actually was drawing this book and our other book that we're working on at Simon & Schuster called Forest Hills Bootleg Society all of 2020, all of 2020. And I finished those books a couple months apart and had like a massive burnout breakdown and have been like taking it easy since then. So I've actually been able to kind of like take a breather during most of 2021, and it hasn't affected my process too much just because of wearing out with projects, but definitely got pushed.
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely when we got the email from Dark Horse being like, the book's no longer on the schedule. I was like, what? And then I sent it to our agent, and he was like, oh yeah, don't worry. That's everybody's getting these. It's basically them just saying, there's a pandemic. We don't know what's happening. We're not publishing anything. It's not you guys specifically. And I was like, oh, that makes so much more sense. So much more sense. But, you know, I mean, it's definitely affected my other book, Night Hunters, like, you know, because they're a smaller publisher. Floating World Comics puts out Night Hunters, and they're a smaller publisher, and not as many retailers are as aware of them as are aware of Dark Horse. So, you know, there's been a lot of, you know, the book's done well. It's done very well, but it's also like some shops will get it, you know, the middle of the month. Some shops will get the same issue the end of the month because Diamond is so just kind of all over the place. And
clusterfuck is what they are. Yeah.
Yeah, totally.
And then the other thing is that Everyone Is Tulip was supposed to come out on the 16th, and there's a new outbreak in China, in South China right now. So again, we got delayed. So I think the 30th now, right?
Yes, in comic book stores, Everyone Is Tulip comes out on the 30th, and in bookstores, July 14th.
Oh, perfect. I'm not happy that it got delayed, but I'm happy that I can drop this before the thing comes. So, but yeah, you know, like I think that, you know, Dark Horse had they had what, Aliens and Predator, they had all those like franchises that they were doing, and they lost them all, Star Wars included, right? When Marvel and when Disney bought everything, pretty much. But I like to see some of these, like, you know, smaller indie projects that they're doing. It seems like that's kind of the route they're going. More they're leaning away from the other side. I mean, obviously you got the Black Hammer verse, you got the Magnola verse, you got all that stuff, but then you have projects like yours that are starting to come out from them. What was the decision to go with Dark Horse?
Well, there's a couple things there. One, Dark Horse, I think internally, the logic of why they were excited about us is internally they're trying to make a push into the original graphic novel market in the book trade. So they're trying to go after the, you know, Bloom, This One Summer style, kind of, in air quotes, prestige YA, whatever the fuck that means, play.
Prestige YA.
You know,
so
they're trying to do that, right? And our book maybe is like a little bit older than that. You know, there's a couple swearing, there's a little bit of, you know, a little bit of smooching, you know, and some boobs, but it's kind of
technically got bumped up a category because of boob.
Yeah. But so I think they were excited about it because of that, right? Where it's kind of a play in that general area. And we were excited about them because we're basically self-publishers. So when, you know, our editor, Connor Knudsen, came up to us at, I think it was either Emerald City or C2E2. I don't remember which one, because they're like 2 or 3 weeks apart convention-wise. But he came up to the table and was like, hey, I read Fuck Off Squad. I really liked it. Do you guys have anything like this that you would want to do at Dark Horse? And, you know, I played it cool. You know, I was like, yeah, maybe. Yeah, maybe. So I sent him some stuff, and we talked about some projects, and ultimately we landed on this one. And Nicole and I were very excited about it because we're very passionate about creator ownership, and we're very committed to owning our work because we're both students of the comics medium and understand the history of when creators don't own their work.
Yep.
And so we were very excited because Dark Horse was like, yeah, you guys want to own it? That's cool. No worries. Let's party.
That's awesome.
And it's so far, it's been a very positive relationship. Connor's been great. Dark Horse has been really, really good to us.
Yeah, when we sent the book to Connor, Dave and I had been self-publishing before, so we kind of had this mindset of like, whatever book we're gonna make, we'll just go make it, and then as we're making it, we'll pitch it, or we'll put it out ourselves. So when we sent the book to Connor, it was already probably about halfway done. So Connor was A, totally cool with it, and B, gave us basically complete freedom to do whatever we wanted with the book. He was really great of just like, cool, this book is awesome, finish it and we'll put it out. And so the combination of having almost complete freedom with what we were already making, plus complete creator ownership of the book, is kind of like the sweet spot for us. I think that's the ideal of, you're getting a bigger name publisher, someone with a really good track record, someone that people know, but still having the freedom to be able to make the book that you want to make and own it. Yeah. And not have someone try and take 50 to 75% to 100% of your property.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's important. I think that, these lessons for creators and people that read comic books as fans like myself, like you see constantly creators that have gotten screwed over, you know what I mean? Yeah. And Kirby, Alan Moore,
they're still putting
Ditko, they're still happening. We just don't, it's everywhere. You know what I mean? And it's a shame because when these creators get screwed over, you're also, as fans, we miss out on other work that we might have gotten from them. Like, as a DC guy growing up, I've often thought like, fuck, if they didn't screw him over with Watchmen, what could I have read? What comic books could I have in my collection right now?
Twilight of the Superheroes, man. Like,
yeah, exactly.
Twilight of the Superheroes would have happened with Jose Luis Garcia Lopez drawing it.
Yeah,
which is like, that's like saying that the Sistine Chapel could have been made again. Like that. If anybody listening, if you haven't read the Twilight of the Superheroes pitch document that Alan Moore wrote to Paul Levitz, please go track it down. It's amazing.
It's so good.
I'm not gonna lie, like the first time I read it, I cried at the end when you find out a certain thing that happens to John Constantine. I was like, oh no, John. Oh. It's so good. It's so good. It's so well thought out, and you can see it in that pitch document. Like it's a complete roadmap. Like there's more information in that one pitch document than Stan Lee ever gave to Jack Kirby for anything. It's amazing.
It's true. That's very true. Very true.
Like, and that's just one project that. Who's to say what could have happened if they just hadn't stolen the Watchmen, like full stop?
Yeah, it's throughout the history of comic books. Like you said, it still happens today. We probably just don't know about it as much because people don't talk about it enough. I think it's an important topic. I think I've done a couple videos on the channel where I talk about that because it's upsetting as a fan. Like I don't create comic books, but to watch creators that I care about, care about their work, and then to see them get screwed over, it's frustrating. And
it definitely still happens today. There's a whole, like, I would say that the majority of independent, in air quotes, comics publishing is that. It's just couched differently. So these days, the way it works is most publishers have deals where they do 50-50 intellectual property splits, where they position it to the creator as like, we're going to have a partnership. We're going to try and go out and sell this together. The Aftershock model is just that. The Aftershock model is we're going to give, B-list to low A-list tier creators from Marvel and DC, because Mike Martz, the founder of Aftershock, used to be a big editor at Marvel and DC. So he knows all those people. He's like, we're going to give you guys a steady page rate. We're going to give you your Marvel and DC page rate, and then we're going to take half and controlling interest in the property and then go try and sell it to Hollywood. And I mean, it's this weird thing where it's not that they're completely being stolen. The creators take those deals knowing the idea behind it, but it's this weird thing of like, they're kind of being sold on this, like, we're going to be in a partnership together. You're going to have approvals over everything we do. And that's just
you're not going to get approvals on anything.
Yeah. No, why would they do that? They're trying to make money off of other people's hard work. That's what they're doing.
Yep. Yeah, it sucks. And it's not just Aftershock. It's like everybody does that.
Yeah, it's most, if it says creator owned, it probably means creator participation, which is this model of you get a percentage of and what you created.
It's so weird too, because you can like see it, you know? Like I personally can look at a book and be like, that is a book where they owned 50% of it. You can feel the ideas are either undercooked, the illustrations aren't as idiosyncratic or trying to take advantage of the comics language because they're trying to be like a film. You know,
the problem is that it promotes this idea of comics for the sake of selling it to make a TV show or a movie. You know, if you're in it because you think that your publisher is going to take that and go to their Netflix deal and sell your thing because that's where the real money is, then you're not making the comic because you care about comics. You're making it because you want to make a show. And comics should not be the like route, the quick way to get into the film industry. If you're making comics, you should be there because you care about comics, because it is such a kind of, like we were saying, it's such a diverse, broad medium that you can do so much with and is so valid on its own. But the weird thing is that it's great that, you know, more of the general public is seeing comics as a little bit more legitimate because of all this Marvel and DC, you know, MCU stuff. But it's this weird double-edged sword, because then people think that, oh, like the only reason to make that is to make a movie, you know, and they're not going back and reading 30 years of Infinity War and, you know, all this stuff. They'll pick up like one book or whatever. But they're not going to explore.
Or even just the fact that like now the ultimate compliment that I receive from people from their perspective, I don't think it's a compliment, but the very kind thing that people have been saying to me and Nicole as we've started to slowly kind of move up in the ranks of indie comics. Well, not Nicole, she's a megastar, she worked on Batman, but you know, as we start making our way up to slightly larger publishers, the compliment is always like, oh, I can totally see this as a movie. Oh, and this would make such a great TV show. And it's like,
that's like an insult to us.
I understand what you're saying. I say, and in that moment, I say, thank you very much, person. That's very nice of you to say. But in the back of my head, I'm like, no, man, this is the thing. This is the goal. Comics is the end goal. Like, it's the greatest medium on earth. Yeah, movies are fun. Yeah, TV's fun. I literally work in them for my day job. It's great. It's cool. Habba Bega Scooby-Doo. But we didn't make Tulip to get it turned into a movie. We made Tulip because we wanted to make a statement about these characters and these themes and this world in this artistic medium. Because comics is unlike any other medium on earth. You can do things with a precision and a clarity that you cannot achieve in any other form. And I'm militantly passionate about that. I really feel that, like, for better or for worse, like, I feel like like I'm in a holy war against boring bullshit. Like, comics is the epitome of artistic achievement to me personally. And when someone boils down 5 years of our work to, oh, I could see somebody else doing something kind of cool with this, I'm like, fucking really, bro?
That being said, if there's a producer listening to this who wants to make a movie, call us.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. There's a difference, though, between like accepting or even pursuing opportunities and making something to try and game the system and unlock tumblers to get an option payment. Like, that's just such a boring way to spend your time.
I mean, it's very clear. I can tell. I've been reading comic books for a long fucking time. I mean, I'm 34 and I started reading when I was like 4, 5, so like I know comic books pretty well, I think. And you can tell when a comic book is being used as a tool to create something else. And those comic books are, I'm sorry, I'm not trying to bash, but those comic books are shit. And they're and it's kind of like what this bad idea comics. As a consumer, as a retailer, the comic books are basic. They are literally just basic fucking comic books. It's like, here, let me throw some money at this writer and artist, and let's just go make a comic book that's passable. And that's, and it's frustrating as a comic book fan to see that kind of stuff. And, I think that your guys' stuff, I'm not saying it couldn't be adapted, but like it feels like this is you can tell it was created to be a comic book. It wasn't created to like, hey, maybe we can make a TV miniseries out of this. Like it doesn't have that vibe to it. So I think that's what really stands out about your work. And I absolutely, you guys made me lifelong fans with these 2 projects. I want to check out the rest of your stuff. I checked at the store. Fuck Off Squad was the only book that I could find that I saw that had your guys' name on it. But yeah, I'm very happy to see what else you guys have in the works, which brings me to my next question. Can you talk a little bit about the project that you guys are going to be doing through Simon & Schuster?
Yeah, so Forest Hills Bootleg Society it's going to be, I think, 210-page OGN about a group of high school girls who go to a kind of conservative Christian high school in the middle of nowhere, California. And they kind of stumble on to this access to bootleg hentai DVDs and decide to start distributing them, selling them at their school to the boys in their very Christian high school. And they sort of start this quote unquote drug ring for selling comic book. I mean, I wish selling bootleg anime. And it takes place in 2005. So they're sitting at their computers, burning CDs, scribbling the names on them, all that stuff. And the stress of running a, black market business in their high school really kind of does things to their relationships, and they have to navigate, whether they want to be popular kids or what their goals are or what their relationships are going to be during all this stuff. And it's a kind of like character drama, again, based around this idea of selling bootleg anime DVDs.
Yeah, it's basically like Fuck Off Squad, but with a lot of Christianity and hentai.
Yeah.
That's awesome, man.
What ends of the spectrum.
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of interested. I want to read this book. When can we expect an announcement in terms of when it's going to be released?
All I know is that it's being targeted at summer 2022. I don't know that we have a date yet or anything. But yes, it's coming from Simon & Schuster, so it'll be the biggest thing that I've done so far, for sure. I'm curious to see if the print run will rival Batgirl or be dwarfed by it or what. I have no idea.
I don't think I actually know what the full print run on Batgirl was. I should ask that.
1 million copies. It was 1 million
copies.
I
don't think that's probably the case.
Really? I thought they said, I thought we got zoomed into that meeting and there was Jim Lee being like, it's got a bat on it, 1 million copies.
No, but he did say he likes my art in an interview. So
that's true. Yes.
That's why. Yeah. It's cool.
that is pretty fucking awesome. So besides the book dropping, this week as of when this will be posted, what else are you guys working on that you can talk about or kind of tease?
So the collection for my creator-owned book from Floating World with Alexis Zirit, Night Hunters, which is a dystopian cyberpunk comic. It's very different than what I make for Nicole. Because basically kind of in the same way that we were talking about earlier of like, I write to the artist. Like Alexis was like, I want to do a book. And I was like, what do you want to draw? And he was like, I want to draw weird cyberpunk cops and machine guns. And I was like, all right, I can write that. And so we made this kind of like Paul Verhoeven-esque, 2000 AD-esque dystopian comic about two brothers that live in Venezuela 100 years in the future. And the way Venezuela has developed is that there's a law that's been passed where if you want to have a child in a hospital, run for public office, or own property, you have to have been or currently be a police officer. So that makes society become two stratas. There's like cops and everybody else. And everybody else are basically like, the dregs of society. They're all forced to live in the streets. So our book follows these two brothers, one who chooses to be a police officer and the other who doesn't, as they attempt to kind of reconcile their problems over this crime spree that breaks out that one of them is involved in. And the collection, the fourth issue of that just came out, I think like 2 weeks ago or a week ago. And the collection comes out, I believe, October 22nd, I think. Other than that, the collection for my Star Trek miniseries, Seven's Reckoning, drawn by Angel Hernandez, comes out July 20th. And those are the two things that I think are on my radar.
Yeah, I am mostly finishing up For Sales right now. We've got some final edits to do on that. And then I'm kind of picking up some covers. I have a couple of Rick and Morty covers coming out. There's a Jenica 2, the TMNT cover coming out. And I'm doing some shorts for a couple of DC anthologies, the like Wonder Woman of History stuff. So there'll be some bio comics in there. I'm doing, eventually this won't come out until next year, probably planning on doing something for, there's a Dagger anthology. So it's mostly short stuff right now. I'm working on some personal projects. And then Dave and I have some pitches that we're actively putting together and working on. And that's kind of where my main focus is right now, is really developing those things and getting them to editors to hopefully be able to make a new book.
Awesome. That's very good news. I'm very excited to hear that. And before I let you go, if I could just get a couple last words on Everyone Is Tulip, why everyone should pick up the book. And then afterwards, just where we can find you online, where we can find your work. And I'm going to drop all the links down below.
Yeah, I would say that, there's a lot of really great comics coming out right now, more so maybe than ever in the history of the medium. And I count myself very fortunate to be able to be making work at this time because it's so competitive and so hard. And I do not take for granted the fact that Dark Horse and the other publishers that I've worked with have, rolled the dice on me or me and Nicole. But that being said, I genuinely think that that Everyone Is Tulip is a step up for both Nicole and I. I think it's a complex work. I think it's an interesting book that I don't know that many comics that don't have a clear-cut kind of mold that it fits into. And I think that's one of the strengths of Everyone Is Tulip, is that it's neither fish nor fowl in a good way. It's a interpersonal drama, as we talked about before, about the world of influencers and navigating, fame and artistic reappropriation. But it's also funny. Like, I feel like when we talk about it, I get a little bit, kind of like, let me tell you about Duchamp. But like the book itself is it's a fun read, and it's a humorous book. It kind of, it is serious, but it also kind of pokes fun at the institutions that we are deconstructing within the book. And also Ellie Hall and Nicole's color work, like, it's amazing. I feel like if this book had been published 10 years ago, it would come out from Fantagraphics and it would have been drawn in a very specific style. This, I feel like, in some ways is kind of the apotheosis of what comics has been moving towards, in that there are a plethora of genres that cover all types of stories, and they're executed in ways that range from artistically ambitious to trite. And that's what I want. I want more bad comics. I want more great comics. I just want more comics, period. And for me, Everyone Is Tulip is the work that I'm very, very, very proud of. And I feel like Nicole and Ellie just knocked it out of the park. And I'm so honored to be able to call them creative compatriots.
Oh, you.
It's true. It's true. Like if I didn't work on this book, I would see this in a shop and be like, what the fuck is that? And then I would open it up and I would see those 9-panel grid cell phones and I'd be like, what the fuck is this? And I would buy the book. Like but that's me. That's my taste because I'm obsessed with the formal language of comics. And in the book, there are lots of very interesting, from my perspective, interesting formal attempts at using the language of comics in ways that haven't been used before.
Yeah, I think, you know, if you're someone who is on the internet in any capacity, you're going to probably relate to this book, at least on some level. And I think we're probably pretty hard pressed to find anybody in our society who isn't on the internet in some way. And the one thing that I would say about it is that we've talked to a lot of people at this point about the book, and a lot of people who wouldn't normally read a book like this, who would look at the book and be like, oh, this is pastel, this is girly, this is whatever. I read only superhero comics. I'm a Marvel and DC guy. And the number of people that we've got that said, I didn't think I was going to like this, and I read it to cover cover, I loved it, is just, I kind of can't even believe that. But I mean, I think it really speaks to the messaging of what we're trying to say with the book of, this is something that's really relevant to us as a society right now. And it can connect to you, whether you're a Marvel and DC guy, or whether you read only Fantagraphics, or whether you read web comics, or any kind of, if you like comics at all, I think that this will connect to you. Or if you're a creator, because so much of the book is actually about what it's like to be a creator and the kind of decisions that you're making doing that. So if you make anything, you will probably connect with the book. And it is out in comic shops on June 30th and bookstores on June, I thought it was 15th,
July,
but maybe it's 4th
July.
But you can also read a preview of it on everyoneistulip.com right now. We're serializing it 3 pages a week. So if you want to take a look, see what it's like, get a feel for the book before you buy it, that's an option too. Yeah, so it's going to be out soon. I'm very excited.
Awesome. And then, yeah, before we get out of here, where we can find you guys online, and I'm going to drop all your links down below.
Yeah, you can find me either at my website, where there's a bunch of comics that we've self-published that aren't available through Diamond, which is heydavebaker.com. Or if you want to watch videos of me drawing or doing dumb things on the internet, you can find that on TikTok, Instagram, and Twitter at xdavebakerx. Or if you want to listen to my podcast, which is a deep dive explainer podcast called Deep Cuts, you can find that wherever you get podcasts. Just type Deep Cuts. It's there.
And then you can find me at my website, which is just NicoleGoux.com, on Twitter or Instagram at Twitter at Nicole Goux, and at Instagram at ngoo. And I mostly post art, and now me being really bad at skating and learning how to roller skate. So if you're very interested in that, there's a lot of new skating contests. And my name is spelled Goux. A little confusing.
All right. Well, thank you guys so much. And I'm very excited to actually I'm going to read the book in print when it comes out again. Yeah. Anytime you guys have a project you guys want to promote, please keep me in mind, because I'll always be happy to help out.
You don't know what you're getting yourself into, Ryan.
That's fine. That's fine. I don't sleep much. I just work and I do the YouTube channel. So I'm always open to talk, man. Always happy to help them out.
Cool. Thank you so much.
All right, guys. Thank you guys.
Have a good one.